Hello, friends, and welcome back to Simple Haskell. I apologize for all the time that has been since my last video. I had quite a number of things to take care of with my startup, as well as I wanted to kind of take a step back from Simple Haskell and work on a couple things that I had to do in order to make the channel a little bit better. It started out very rough, but as I got feedback, I learned things that I needed to fix and get better at along the way. And so I hope you'll see that I implemented many of those suggestions. Um, and yeah, let's start with one of the first suggestions, which is to kind of give a little synopsis of what we're going to end up actually doing here. So we're going to be talking about staticWhich, which is no pun intended, a tool that will allow us to find executables at compile time. And we will learn why that's important, how that helps us out, and how it works through the which executable, which we will be using to find ffmpeg. And this will be working around the concept of the path. And so if you are newer to programming and unfamiliar with the path, you can think of it as effectively a list or a set of folders in which Bash or our terminal will look for an executable in order to run it. So if you were to go to your command line and type in which, you would see that it will look. It will show you a program and how to use the which executable, as long as you give it no arguments. Um, and so we'll be working through our path through Nix. So if you are not following along through Nix, then you'll need to go through the ffmpeg site to add ffmpeg to your path, as well as Cabal install, GHC, and all the normal stuff for Haskell. But we'll be using Nix because I think that's just simply a lot easier, especially when there's someone to kind of walk us through it. Me. So and then we'll set up our Cabal file, our Nix file, and then create a file type converter. And why we're going to be creating a file type converter is that this is an actual use case I have had in the past for working with the OpenAI WhisperAPI, OpenAI WhisperAPI. I always get those two confused. And yeah, and why we need to do that is we want to convert a video from make v or some other file type like MP4 to a webm. And a webm is a lot more efficient in its storage, so it'll be a lot easier to use with the Whisper API's size limits. All right, so let's move on over to Emacs. So I'm going to start by making a directory for a project called staticWhich. And we'll see that here. So go into staticWhich and we'll see that it is empty. So we are going to do Cabal init interactive. This will give us all the options that we would like. The only thing I'm really going to change is the library and executable. I'm going to choose the defaults for everything else. And then I have to choose a license, so I'm just going to choose MIT, but it really does not matter for the rest. There we go. And now we'll see that we have a little simple Cabal project created here with my lib. And so this is where we're going to be wanting to work out of. The next step is that we're going to use Cabal to Nix. So if we are using, Nix, then we're going to want to do this step by getting Cabal to Nix into our terminal. So this is now adding the Cabal to Nix executable to our path. And then we want to run the command Cabal to Nix Cabal to Nix, make us a shell derivation of the current directory, and we want to write that into shell.nix. So now we look again, we see we have a shell.nix, and let's go check it out. And voila. And so, yeah, we're going to start with how we should make our Nix file. And so the whole point of Nix here is that we are just effectively creating our path for this project. And so we are creating a custom shell for this project, which will allow us to access ffmpeg as well as a couple Haskell libraries. So the Haskell libraries to start with that we're going to use is the one of key interest, which we're going to want to use process, and we're going to use, file path. And all that does here is that it brings them into scope from Nix packages through this generated Nix derivation, which I won't be spending too much time on or actually go deep into explaining. But what we want to do is we want to take that and add them to here. So now our library Haskell depends includes these packages. And since our executable depends on our library, as we will see when we look at the Cabal file, we don't need to worry about adding them to executable Haskell depends. But what we do want to add is this library system depends with packages.ffmpeg. And what that means is that this Nix derivation will ensure that ffmpeg is on our path and our library will be able to access it. So again, in the same way, our executable will be able to access it through the library. And I'm just going to change this a bit by doing packages.makeShell, and I believe it's inputs equals this. Actually, give me a second to check this here. Okay, so this is what it is. We want to do build inputs, and I'll explain why we're doing this in a second. Packages.cabal install and inputs from. So what I've done here is I have ensured that we are always using the same Cabal install when we are using GHC and all of these Haskell packages. And why that's important is that we want this to be able to ship to any computer capable of Nix, which might hopefully be Windows in the future, but of course currently is only Mac and Linux, or Unix in general. But that will, again, ensure that Cabal install knows how to find all of these packages. I actually have ran into an issue while practicing for this video where I was not able to find ffmpeg, even though I was able to find it directly through which, because I didn't use this little segment here. And so I was also able to do that without doing this step. But the point here is that it's non-deterministic. I don't know for sure if Cabal install will be able to find ffmpeg if I haven't done this. So let's just make our lives a little bit easier and ensure that we're going to be able to find it, and we're not going to have some crazy issue. Yeah. So now we should be good to run our command to start our project. So we're going to say Nix shell run Cabal REPL. Nix shell is going to, since we have not given it a file path, is going to automatically look for shell.nix, which is what we have named our Nix file. If you have named it something else, you of course need to get that file path. And then we're going to get the command to run the command of Cabal REPL once we have started our project. Once we have entered into our shell. And so once the path has been set, we enter into our bash shell with all these dependencies available. We're going to run Cabal REPL. And so I could, of course, do this in two parts, but I just, why not? And I have a syntax error. Let me check this quick. Oh, right. No, actually, I even know what this is. I simply just need to say, put that in brackets. Otherwise, Nix will see it as a syntax error. And now this will work. I'm going to close this off. That's just an old project. And now we're good to go. I'm going to minimize this and keep it open, and we'll see why in a second. But now we need to set up our Cabal file. So as I said, we've created an executable and a library. The executable depends on the library. So if we add our packages of process, which, and file path to the library, then the executable will also be good. And we're going to want to quit and restart this so that our Cabal REPL has all of these dependencies. And then we can get into actually coding this. So the first thing that we're going to be doing that is really the key point of this video here is actually quite simple. As awesome as it is, it's extremely simple. So ffmpeg, what this is going to be is a type of file path. And this is going to be a file path, which is the file path to our binary or executable that we're going to be using in our project. And so that binary, of course, being ffmpeg, hence the name. How we do that and how we make sure it's done at compile time is we use template Haskell. And so that $sign with brackets, what you see there is using template Haskell, a special syntax for template Haskell. And I want to say language template Haskell so that the compiler knows we are using template Haskell, and then this will work. You could see what the error is like if you want. That's going to fail because there's nothing done there. But we can see it's looking for, effectively a queue, which is the monad for template Haskell, a queue expression, and that will evaluate at runtime. So our expression that we're going to use here is staticWhich of ffmpeg. And of course, that's not in scope. So we're going to do import system.which. And so now it's just giving us a warning that we're not using ffmpeg at all, but it did work. So now let's play around with this a bit, like what's going on here. Well, really all we're doing is we are running the command of which on ffmpeg. And that's going to give us this file path here. And now if we were to enter into the Cabal REPL, and we look at ffmpeg, it's going to give us that file path. So if we were to then go back here into our shell.nix, and I'll expand it a little bit just so it's not as hard to see. And then we comment this out. So we no longer have ffmpeg. We're going to exit our shell a couple times. Wow, I am in a lot of different Nix shells. Okay, there we go. So I for sure know that I have no ffmpeg loaded. I just have a very basic path. I can even echo the path so you can see it. Well, it's basic-ish, less stuff, but still a lot. And I guess I have everything that is in my configuration.nix set up here, which, again, we won't be talking about today, but might be in a future video series. Yeah, if we were to now say which ffmpeg, just to check it here, we see no ffmpeg. And so if we were to then run nixshell run Cabal REPL, this is going to give us the error. Did I save this? Why is that not working? I'm going to check this for a second. I think something is happening. apologies for that. I think that what this is actually about is a long time ago I ran into a issue with Cabal and the path. There is a little bit of a bug there where there is some state that persists. And so I could go about solving all of that so that we can see that the ffmpeg will not be loaded. But I will kind of, neglect that for this video so that we can just keep going. Because that's really, unfortunately, a bug that exists in Cabal with the path. But anyways, now that we have ffmpeg, we're going to bring in system.process and system.filepath. So why we were bringing in these other two modules here is that we are going to first we are first going to take the file path wherever it is as input, file path as input, and we are going to replace the extension. And I believe, if I remember correctly, that replace extension is quite literally a function of system.filepath. And so why we want to do that is that ffmpeg directly reads from the command to see how to convert the file. And so if we were to, in our terminal, say ffmpeg-i, meaning input, video.mp4 to video.webm, it will automatically know that it needs to convert from a .mp4 to a .webm. And so that's all we're going to be doing so that we can write a Haskell program which works around the WhisperAPI. And that's the whole point of using ffmpeg and looking for an executable in this way. Yeah, so let's do that. Let's say convert, and it's going to take a file path and do an I/O. And I guess we might as well return the new file path. So we have our input file path, and we are going to make this a do statement so that we can work with the I/O monad, of course. And we are going to say let output file path, which we are going to return, be replace extension with .webm. I believe that compiles. I feel like something weird is going on here. Okay, there we go. Still not sure why that's not working, but we're just going to put that in there. And so we now have an output file path. And so we are going to next call read process. And how we do that is, I believe, we want to use the proc function. So I'm going to switch back to my browser here. Go to Google. Actually, no, sorry, I'm mistaken. If we are using read process, we don't need to actually use the proc function. Proc would create a data type of create process, which we won't get into here, but for read process, all we actually need is the file name of the executable, which we have procured through staticWhich. We'll give it any standard or any arguments like we would when we're using ffmpeg at the command line, and then any standard input that we would give to ffmpeg. But it never will ask for any, at least with what we're doing. So we're just going to give an empty string. So now if you go back to our Emacs here, we are just simply going to pass ffmpeg as the first argument, and then we're going to give it a list of command line arguments. We're going to pass it I, which just means input of the, where our input is the input file path, and we're going to write to this output file path, where the output file path will be rewritten with .webm, and because it sees that it's .webm, it knows that it has to convert from whatever file path we gave it. So in this case, we're going to give it an MP4. It is going to write to a .webm and do the conversion for us. Do all the compression that will allow us to work with the WhisperAPI. And then the last thing to do is just simply pass back the output file path. And just a note here, I actually mistook the ordering of replace extension. As we could see from looking at Hugel, if we look at replace extension, it's not going to stop us from making the mistake here because a file path is just a string, so it can't tell what which one is actually the file path unless you give it as the proper ordering of arguments. And so we want to make sure that our extension is the second argument. And so that is exactly what I've done. When we look at this, we see that we now have .webm instead of the opposite way. And so now that we'll take it from video.mp4, for example, video.makev, video.whatever, to video.webm. Even if it was .webm, it would be .webm, and ffmpeg, would still do the same thing. It would convert from webm to webm. Yeah. And so I believe this should work now. Let's see here. Oh, and I forgot to give the standard input. Okay, and now this should work. So let me check my current directory. I believe I should have test edit.mp4. I do. And then we're going to enter back into the Nix shell or the Cabal REPL inside our Nix shell. Where convert is there. And we're going to say convert test edit.mp4. This is going to automatically look in our base directory of our project. And this is, that's because I've already done it. We're going to want to remove file test edit.webm because it does not know to overwrite it. Import system.directory, I believe. I am just going to do this the basic way. Remove test edit.webm. Again, just from practicing something here. And get back into our REPL. And now this should work. And we have created we are in the process, rather, of creating a video which will be smaller, compressed, and more likely to fit within the constraints of the WhisperAPI, so that we can transcribe the text of this video. So, for example, we could scrape this video and then transcribe what I'm saying, and then feed what I'm saying into ChatGPT, and we could get or WhisperAPI. Transcribe through Whisper, feed that into ChatGPT, and say, okay, what is this guy saying in 5 lines? And yeah, we'll be good. What's going on here? Oh, I'm not sure what happened with my terminal there, but that's effectively it. And so, really, we can go a number of different ways from here, and do whatever we would like to with ffmpeg. I've also used this with the Python interpreter, with JavaScript compiler, and the other cases is like in the blockchain with certain CLIs that you have to use, so that we can turn them into Haskell functions where we know the behavior of them a little bit better. And of course, in this case, we can do, we can make a Haskell program that interacts with the Whisper API. So pretty cool. I might actually even make that into a future video, just because, the hype of OpenAPI at the moment. Hype. I mean, I don't know if it's really hype so much as just being awesome. But yeah, that is all that we need to talk about for this video. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you guys have any more suggestions, please let me know. I hope you guys see that I really do appreciate your suggestions and will act on them fast. And again, just simply appreciate them and you guys for watching. And as well, suggestions for future videos. I think we're going to start getting into some of the more interesting topics of Haskell and really seeing the power of Haskell, if we haven't already understood the power of Haskell through just the basics of writing pure typed functions. Thank you so much again, and hope you enjoy this video.